Hey Lamb Dog, as promised, this is Barking Madly. I mentioned I was going to have a whole bunch of questions and comments and just wanted to start a discussion about Ron Paul. And I guess that's even more timely now that Ron Paul did as well as he did in New Hampshire. I don't know how to attack it. I mean, there's a lot, or not attack, wrong word, but handle all the different issues and stuff like that and questions I've got. Because he's, from what I've been reading on Ron Paul, he's got an extremely broad set of planks for his entire platform, not just in terms of his presidential election, but just in the way he's voted and dealt with in the past. By the way, a lot of which I really agree with, mainly in the areas of civil liberties. In general, I kind of have like three different areas that I'm kind of big groups that I think kind of fit into what I have questions about. One is his commentary and attitude about big government. And not just the fact that government's big. I think pretty much everybody, including your most socialist left-leaning people in the country, would agree that government's big enough. But just in terms of how he wants to attack that issue. And I also want to talk about his attitude toward business, which also kind of funnels back into the big government aspect of it. And then also at some point discuss the international aspects of how he wants to treat things. I don't know that this is all going to be one video. Probably not, mainly because it's a lot of crap and it'll get lost if I do it in one big one. And also, I don't have Alzheimer's, but sometimes I feel like it because I get totally sidetracked. Ooh, shiny. No. Anyhow, mainly because I've got the most research and the best understanding of what is going on, and the most, I guess, the largest barbs that I have are in concern to his approach towards big business. I've never seen the term used with it, but he strikes me very much as a laissez-faire kind of guy. He just wants government completely hands-off, very strong on capitalistic tendencies and all that stuff, including his aspect of, using the personal property law and such like that we don't need the EPA and a bunch of other stuff, that we just need to stop regulating. My first and biggest comment on that is there's a reason that a lot of the regulations are in place. I mean, if you go back, let's say 1870s to 1920s, you've got Carnegie Steel, Standard Oil, and all of that, and the whole robber baron class of people that pretty much typifies, at least in my mind, what unadulterated, pure, hardcore capitalism is. And I think pretty much anybody around will agree that if you weren't rich around the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, life sucked. It wasn't quite so bad for the farmers, I don't think. And I don't know a whole lot about the agrarian portion of the U.S. at that point. But if you were living in an urban environment, it was horrible. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, Rise and Fall of Silas Lapham. You can read all kinds of stuff that they're dramatic and they're not really historical fact. They're not historical fact. But the life and the environment and the world that they portrayed those in are reasonably close to reality from everything I've been able to tell. And life, kind of reminds me a lot of what, not Locke, life. Anyways, the state of nature, nasty, brutish, and short, and that kind of strikes me as what pure capitalism is. Unless you happen to be one of the strongest, and you can make your own way, headway. You've got things like legislation to prevent monopolies, fair practices, things like, forcing banks to have truth in lending statements. These are all regulations, and these are all things that, to me, are good things. Is everything good? No, clearly, but I don't care how perfect of a society you try to come up with, there's always going to be people that, create loopholes in the laws and all that stuff. So I don't think just saying, well, there's government, this is an example of bad government, I don't think is a good argument to say, well, this is bad, so ergo it's all bad. Yeah, damn phone. Anyway, and in particular, I think, we've made some really big headway over the years, but you go back to the mid-'80s and you had the savings and loan fiasco. Then you had a lot of the crap going on with the internet bubble when that happened. Just a lot of businesses trying to make money legally, but just doing it in really stupid ways. And then there was what was the other one? It was back in a few years before the internet bubble, where these I wish I could remember the name, bunch of guys figured out a way to work the system using futures and whatnot, and they basically ended up having to get bought out by the federal government. All the debt, I think it was on the order of $1 trillion or something. I can't remember. But it was gigantic because these guys had figured out a system, the math said it would work, and all of a sudden when put into a real world system, it didn't work, and didn't lead to a meltdown anywhere near the scale of what we had with the current subprime mortgage fiasco, but I mean, it sucked. And that leads into the subprime fiasco. Whether you want to try to blame it on Alan Greenspan and Clinton, or whether you want to try to blame it on Bush and the Republican Congress, I don't give a shit. The fundamental aspect of it is there were regulations and loopholes in place that allowed people to make exorbitant amounts of money, and with poor and limited oversight in terms of they were able to write the loans, sell the loans, bundle the loans, and there was no accountability for it. So consequently, amongst all the bad loans that are out there now, nobody can track what's going on. It's a complete and utter disaster. But at any rate, according to Ron Paul, those are the moral and ethical leaders of the country. That capitalistic tendencies, i.e. greed, is going to be, the thing that keeps us on the straight and narrow. What was that guy's name in that movie? Gordon Gekko. Greed is good. Well, in moderated amounts it is. Shit. Red wine is good for you in moderate amounts. I just don't think, just let them do, the markets will solve the problem. No. Things like fuel economy on cars, safety in cars, occupational safety, OSHA. While all of those agencies can definitely go overboard and get their grimy little fucking fingers in places we don't like them, but the idea of having that, you need to have you need to have safety in mind for your employees. You need to take care of them. You can't lie to them. You can't cheat them. You have to pay them. You have to pay them a reasonable wage, and if they work overtime, they need to be paid for that as well. The idea of a minimum wage, I know that starts to raise some hackles, but I'll leave that one aside. But at any rate, at a fundamental level, I'm really concerned with Ron Paul's attitude that free market economy, capitalism, from what I can tell, he's talking relatively unfettered capitalism, is a good thing. And that just terrifies me. And that's even looking at it compared to now. I mean, one of the things that has pissed me off over the last, 10 years or so, has been the way the courts, SCOTUS in particular, there's a few cases that I wanted to mention. A while back, there was some Kelo versus New London. This was the eminent domain judgment where, don't worry, your property can be taken to make a profit because that's for the public good. You want to talk about, I can only imagine what frickin' shall not be infringed would have to say about the government coming in, taking your property and giving it to some fucking land developer so that they can make a bigger profit. What? And I can't remember the justice that wrote the majority opinion, but he was a fucking liberal. Like, what the fuck? Okay, get past that one. There was another case that came up. I thought it was SCOTUS, but it actually turns out it was a federal district court. And I'll put the links to these cases down below. It was Experion versus Lifelock. Experion, as I'm sure you know, is a credit monitoring bureau. They are them. I don't know whether it's TransUnion. They've changed names so many times I can't keep track of it anymore. I do my little credit report every once a year, and I kind of just don't really pay much attention to what name's on it, but just check to make sure that the numbers and all that stuff add up. Lifelock, as you may or may not know, is a company that you could hire, and they would basically lock your credit rating, or lock your credit account, not your account, but lock your ability to get credit down so that you'd have to jump through an awful lot of hoops to do that. Like you go to H&R Block to handle your taxes, you hire an attorney to take care of any of your legal stuff. LifeLock was there to help you take care of your personal privacy and your credit rating, and yet they would charge you a fee. And granted, they were charging you a fee to do things you could do yourself, just like you can do your own federal taxes and you can represent yourself in a court of law. I know there's some iffiness that some people were saying that was kind of raunchy about it, but after doing a lot of digging on it, I actually bought it as a Christmas gift for a number of people. Well, Experion says, oh, no, 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 that's too much work. You know, let us take care of the credit problems. We'll help people out. Chicken or fox guarding the henhouse, anybody? And of course, the district court said, sure, yep, you're right. Lifelock, no, they don't have the right to do it. Now, Lifelock still exists, but they no longer have the tools to really put a tight-fisted clamp on your privacy and on your ID theft. Another one was, a little bit more recently, was AT&T versus Concepcion. This basically says that the result of this was that you do not have a right, fundamentally, to do a class action lawsuit. The argument being is that a lot of these class action lawsuits start costing companies money, and even if you had signed an arbitration agreement, that, you know, they're saying that an arbitration agreement, if you signed it, or if you agree to it, you're good enough. Only problem is, almost every company out there nowadays forces an arbitration agreement. AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, Nextel, T-Mobile, and all the others, they all force it. So it's not like you have any market options to say, you know what, Verizon does it, so I'm going to go to T-Mobile or whatever. No, they all do it. I'm not saying it's collusion or anything, it's just smart business practice on their part. But unless you completely decide to opt out of a technology, you do not have a choice. And on the one side, you look at, that Concepcion versus AT&T, that'll help mitigate some of the frivolous lawsuits. The only problem is, if say Verizon, they're the biggest out there, if they screw everybody over for, let's say, $20 a year, would you bother going through arbitration to get $20? I sure as hell wouldn't. And no lawyer's going to help you go through arbitration for it either. And even if you go and try to sue them by yourself, you're definitely not going to go through and do a lawsuit for it. So what does that leave? Well, in one of the good cases where the lawyers and their ambulance chasing comes in, they could, at any rate, do a class action lawsuit and bring up this issue that, you know, you're getting your $20 stolen, I'm getting my $20 stolen, and so's another 5 million people. 5 million people at $20, that's $100 million. It's not worth any individual's ability to go after it, but yet because of the fact you can do a class action lawsuit, or you could, that made it worthwhile. You could actually have some checks and balances on the open market. And I mean, that to me is another bastardization of it. And then you get to the citizens versus the Federal Election Committee. That was the recent overturn of McCain Feingold, the whole Campaign Finance Act, which says that, oh, a corporation, they've got freedom of speech. Excuse the fuck out of me, no they don't. They are made up of corporate officers, employees, and management, all of which, as individuals, have the free right to free speech. My basic fundamental problem here is, if you ever look up corporations, they are what is termed an artificial person. What? But anyway, that basically gives that, as an artificial person, gives them fundamental constitutional rights. I'm sorry, the only time I want to have anything to do with artificial persons is when I'm starting to talk with Data, or Twiggy, or C-3PO, or something like that, and we've got artificial intelligence. Once we get to that point, we can deal with an artificial person. But until then, the corporation it's a fucking piece of paper that it's a legal agreement, and it has no more standing other than the fact that it's a legal agreement. And to give that, and corporations as a whole, fundamental legal protections that are not given to the individuals of the United States is fundamentally flawed. And that is why I have massive concerns about Ron Paul's aspect of just let the free markets take care of it. Because the free markets won't. The corporations will go for the bottom line, which is profit. They've proven time and again that the profit motive almost always trumps the interest of doing the public good. Because quite honestly, you and I if we screw up, we go to jail. A corporation, yeah, maybe the corporate figureheads will go to jail. Most often not. And I have a big problem with that. I'm getting up at the 15 minutes, and like I said, this is why I'm going to break it up. The next ones might be able to get both of them in one, but at any rate, I'll make sure I put the links, and thanks a bunch. Talk to you later.